Chapter 16. Shizu's awakening. Lyra's perspective. The heavy slam of the door still echoed faintly in Lyra's ears. She leaned back against it for a brief moment, letting the silence settle over the house like a veil. Without the others, the air finally felt calm, almost sacred. The rowdy laughter of Veldora, Rimuru's playful grumbling, Ethan's nervous questions, and even Cherry's quiet shuffling were now gone. Only two remained inside, herself and Saphira. The silver-haired woman sat elegantly on the couch, her posture flawless as ever. Her serene expression betrayed little, but the slight furrow between her brows spoke of restrained curiosity. Her eyes, crystalline and watchful, followed Lyra with the quiet intensity of someone weighing every motion. At last, Saphira broke the silence. Her voice, smooth and refined, carried just enough weight to demand an honest answer. "Lyra, why did you throw everyone out of the house? Even Lord Rimuru?" Lyra stilled. Her gaze drifted down the hallway before she slowly raised her hand and pointed toward a single closed door. The edge in her crimson eyes softened, becoming almost protective as her finger lingered in that direction. "There," she said, her voice steady. "Inside that room is someone sleeping." Saphira tilted her head, a strand of silver hair sliding across her shoulder. A faint crease touched her perfect features. "And who is inside that room?" Lyra pressed her lips into a thin line before answering, her tone calm but threaded with reverence. "Inside that room is someone Lord Rimuru deeply cares about. Her name is Shizu Izawa." The name startled Saphira, though only slightly, a ripple disturbing still water. Her eyes widened the barest fraction, curiosity flickering through her otherwise composed demeanor. Leaning forward, she rested her chin delicately on her hand, silently urging Lyra to continue. "She has been in a deep sleep for 3 days, Lyra explained softly, as if describing something fragile. "Her body is merging with an egoless flame lord spirit. The process is consuming her, reshaping her entire existence." For the briefest moment, Saphira's elegance wavered. Her lips parted in surprise, her brows drawing together in thought. Yet she said nothing, allowing Lyra's words to sink into the stillness of the room. Lyra placed a hand over her chest, her voice low. "I have been watching over her this whole time. Guarding her, caring for her, so that she would not endure the forging of her body and soul alone." Saphira's expression softened into something thoughtful, but the quiet question in her eyes remained. She voiced it gently, with calm persistence. "But why send everyone away? Why even Lord Rimuru?" Lyra's face hardened, her crimson eyes sharpened, her back straightening as her voice cut through the silence. "Because Shizu is almost naked in that room." The bluntness pulled a rare reaction from Saphira. Her eyes flickered, and her lips curved ever so slightly, as if she had to suppress a laugh at Lyra's lack of restraint. Still, she quickly recomposed herself, her tone measured. "And why is she naked?" Lyra did not hesitate. Her voice carried both seriousness and faint sympathy. "Because of her evolution. Her body is changing, growing. She now stands nearly 180 centimeters tall. Any clothing she once had could not endure the transformation. They would have torn apart, so I removed them." Saphira leaned back, her hands folding neatly in her lap. Her crystalline gaze calmed, yet behind it lingered a glimmer of intrigue. "I see. So that is why you locked the door so tightly with magic." Lyra nodded firmly, her crimson eyes unwavering. "Exactly. I sealed the door so no one could enter, not even by accident." Her gaze darkened as she remembered Rimuru's hand reaching for the doorknob earlier. "That is why I forced everyone out," Lyra continued, her tone like sharpened steel. "Because Lord Rimuru told me she is close to waking. When that moment comes, I will not allow her first breath of life to be stained with awkwardness. After surviving this evolution, the last thing she should feel when she opens her eyes." Lyra's words trailed, but the conviction in them rang louder than any finishing phrase. Saphira studied her in silence, her refined features unreadable. Then, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. A faint smile curved her lips, not mocking, but approving. The silence that followed was heavy, but no longer uncomfortable. It was protective. Shizu's perspective. 3.5 hours had passed since Rimuru had left the house. The silence of the room was almost heavy, the kind that pressed down on one's chest. It was in this silence that Shizu stirred. At first, just the faint twitch of her fingers against the sheets, then the subtle shift of her breathing, deeper and steadier, until finally, her eyelids fluttered open. Her gaze was unfocused, glassy with the haze of deep rest. She blinked several times, lashes trembling, before the world around her began to settle into place. The ceiling above her was unfamiliar. Smooth wood, polished, without the cracks or discoloration of her old room. Her brows knit together slightly. This wasn't where she had been. Slowly, Shizu pushed herself upright, her movements sluggish at first, like a doll being wound up. Her purple eyes darted around, scanning the space. A modestly furnished room, warm in tone, clean yet elegant. Not a place she recognized. A faint shimmer caught her attention. Her gaze shifted toward the door, her breath caught. A magical lock, the kind that gleamed faintly with a protective barrier. Her unease grew. Why was she here? Who had placed her here? Shizu's lips parted slightly, her voice catching in her throat before she even spoke. And then, as if lightning struck her senses, she froze entirely. Her skin tingled. The air against it felt too bare, too exposed. Her eyes widened in horror. She was naked. The realization crashed down like a tidal wave. Heat flared in her cheeks, her entire body tightening with panic. Instinctively, she yanked the blanket off the bed and wrapped it tightly around herself, her knuckles white as she clutched it to her chest. Her breathing turned shallow, fast, ragged. Her heart raced, but beneath the panic, she felt something strange. Different. Her body wasn't just bare. It was changed. Her limbs felt light, almost unnaturally so, as though every movement carried grace and power she didn't remember possessing. When she rose shakily to her feet, the blanket pooling at her ankles, her reflection in the faint sheen of the window caught her attention. She gasped aloud. That wasn't her. At least, not the her she remembered. Her body was taller, noticeably taller. She had always been petite, delicate, yet now her height nearly brushed 180 centimeters. Her frame was lean, but no longer fragile. Every line of her figure had sharpened, refined, as if sculpted anew. Her hands trembled as she lifted them, brushing her fingers against her face, her chest, her arms, reconfirming over and over that this body was indeed hers. The memories returned suddenly, washing over her. The hilltop, the memories, her collapse, and then warmth, the gentle but firm hold of arms catching her. His voice calling her name, filled with an urgency she'd never heard before. Rimuru, her cheeks flushed crimson. Wait, if Rimuru was the one who carried me here, then, does that mean? Her wide eyes shot down to the blanket clutched tightly around her chest. Did Rimuru undress me? The thought set her mind ablaze. Her heart pounded so violently that it hurt. Her face was scarlet now, every possible embarrassing image flashing in her mind. And just as her thoughts spiraled further into chaos, click. The sound of the magical lock disengaging shattered the silence. Shizu jolted, her grip on the blanket tightening until her knuckles ached. Her breath caught in her throat as the door opened. Stepping inside was not Rimuru, but a girl Shizu had never seen before. Her crimson eyes glimmered like embers, sharp yet calm, framed by flowing black hair that carried a silken sheen. She moved with the fluidity of someone perfectly in control, her steps measured, confident. In her hands, she carried neatly folded clothes. Shizu's throat went dry. Who are you? Her voice trembled with unease, and more than a little panic. The girl's expression softened instantly, her lips curving into a reassuring smile. Her tone was gentle, yet carried authority. My name is Lyra. I am your personal maid and bodyguard, appointed directly by Lord Rimuru to care for you. Shizu blinked rapidly, startled by the calmness of her delivery. Personal maid? Bodyguard? Her heart still raced, confusion tangling with embarrassment. But before she could ask further, Lyra tilted her head ever so slightly, her smile taking on a teasing edge. Oh, and before you panic further, no, it wasn't Lord Rimuru who removed your clothes. That was me. Shizu froze. Her face burned so hot she thought steam might burst from her ears. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Her mind simply blanked. Lyra's chuckle was soft, warm, but undeniably mischievous. Her crimson eyes gleamed knowingly as if she could see right through Shizu's frantic thoughts. I also didn't let him enter the room after that. Not even once, she added, the faintest smirk tugging her lips upward. Shizu's heart skipped a beat, her head lowering instinctively, her bangs falling forward to half hide her flustered expression. How did she know what I was thinking? Her grip on the blanket tightened even further. She could only manage a whisper, fragile and hesitant. But why would you do that? Lyra's expression shifted again, her teasing softening into practicality, though the amusement still lingered in her eyes. Because your body is changing. Growing taller. Any clothes you had would have torn apart. I removed them to keep you comfortable. Her crimson gaze flickered downward for a brief moment, then returned to Shizu's face, her lips curving into a sly smirk. Especially here. Shizu followed her gaze instinctively, only to realize Lyra's eyes had been fixed on her chest. Her entire face went scarlet. She nearly squeaked, tugging the blanket higher to cover herself, her posture curling inward. Lyra's chuckle rang softly again, not cruel, but playful. Without pressing further, she stepped forward with the same measured grace and set the folded clothes neatly on the bed beside Shizu. Her voice was calm, matter-of-fact now, but with a touch of warmth. Get dressed. I'll prepare something for you to eat. In 1 hour, I will inform Lord Rimuru that you've awakened. She didn't linger. With a fluid turn, Lyra stepped toward the door. The soft click of the lock disengaging again followed as she closed it gently behind her. The room fell silent once more. Shizu sat there, still frozen, the blanket clutched desperately to her chest, her face burning hotter than fire. Her heart drummed wildly in her ears, each beat echoing louder than the last. Even now, she could still hear Lyra's words replaying in her mind. Not even once. For some reason, the thought brought her a flicker of relief. And yet, her heart continued to race. After that, Shizu take bath. The faint mist clung to Shizu's skin as she stepped out of the bath, the warmth still lingering on her cheeks. Droplets traced down her neck, disappearing into the edge of the towel draped over her shoulders. Her raven hair was damp, strands sticking to her flushed face, framing her violet eyes in a way that made her reflection in the polished glass shimmer almost unreal. She paused, staring at herself. Her heart gave a quiet flutter. It was still her face, still her body, but somehow different. Her eyes seemed clearer, her features softer, more radiant. Her posture even felt different. It was as though her body was completely hers now, no longer weighed down by exhaustion or hidden weakness. She lifted her hand, flexed her fingers, and felt the strange but wonderful sensation of control flowing naturally through her. I feel more alive than I ever have before, she whispered under her breath. Taking her time, she slipped into the clothes that had been carefully prepared for her. The fabric was fresh and smooth against her skin, the belt tying neatly around her waist. The mirror now reflected a woman who not only looked beautiful, but who carried herself with a subtle, newfound confidence. A soft blush lingered on her cheeks, but her lips curved with the faintest trace of a smile. Once dressed, Shizu opened the sliding door and stepped outside. Waiting for her was Lyra, who had been leaning lightly against the wall with her hands folded. The silver-haired girl's expression brightened the instant she saw Shizu, her eyes softening warmly. You look refreshed, Lady Shizu, Lyra said, her voice filled with a gentle kindness. Shizu blinked, her hand instinctively brushing back a damp strand of hair as her cheeks grew warmer. Oh, thank you, I feel much better now. Lyra smiled and gave a small nod, motioning gracefully with her hand. Then, come, there's someone I'd like you to meet. Shizu followed quietly, her footsteps light against the polished floor. Lyra led her toward a modest table where another young woman sat waiting. The moment Shizu's gaze fell upon her, she stopped. The girl sitting there was beautiful in a way that felt raw, untamed. Her hair was striking, pure white at the roots, fading into delicate strands of soft pink at the tips, like seafoam touched by sunrise. It wasn't styled with elegance, it spilled freely down her shoulders, unruly yet dazzling. Her crimson eyes, wide and uncertain, shimmered like fresh-cut rubies. She wore a simple but well-crafted dress of midnight blue with silver threading along the edges. It wasn't the poise of a noble's attire, but it fit her tall figure comfortably. What drew Shizu's gaze most, however, was the silver bracelet on her wrist. A single red ruby was set into it, glowing faintly as though alive, a reminder that despite her nervous posture, this girl radiated power. Saphira was undeniably beautiful, but she wasn't polished, not like the nobles Shizu had seen before. There was an awkwardness in the way she sat, her hands fidgeting slightly on her lap, her eyes darting as though unsure how to behave. It was the beauty of something new, like a rare gem pulled from the ocean, uncut and unrefined, but captivating nonetheless. And then Shizu felt it. A wave of pressure, faint but unmistakable, pressed into her chest. Saphira's aura wasn't controlled. It leaked out clumsily, like waves crashing against rocks. It wasn't malicious, but it was strong enough to make Shizu's breath hitch. The girl seemed to realize it, because her shoulders stiffened, and she quickly rose to her feet. Her movements weren't smooth. They carried a hint of hesitation, as if she had practiced them in her head but wasn't sure if she was doing them right. "I am Saphira," she said, her voice slightly unsteady though she tried to make it firm. She placed a hand awkwardly over her chest and bowed her head. "A subordinate of Lord Rimuru. It's nice to meet you." Shizu blinked, caught off guard by the mix of beauty and nervousness in front of her. That immense power, paired with such uncertainty, made Saphira strangely endearing. For a moment, Shizu almost smiled. "I'm Shizu Izawa," she replied gently, dipping her head in return. Her voice was soft, but her gaze was steady. "I'm new here, so please take care of me." At her words, Saphira's crimson eyes widened slightly. Then, almost shyly, a small smile tugged at her lips. "Lady Shizu," she murmured, her tone losing some of its stiffness. I also only arrived this morning. To work for Lord Rimuru. So, I guess, we're both new." The tension in the air seemed to soften. Shizu's chest loosened as she released the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Saphira's aura was still there, heavy and untamed, but now it felt less suffocating. It was like the roar of the sea, wild, powerful, but not something meant to harm. The two women lowered themselves into their seats across the table. Saphira shifted awkwardly, fidgeting with her bracelet before folding her hands neatly on her lap, trying to mimic composure. Shizu, noticing this, relaxed slightly herself. Lyra stood nearby, watching with an almost knowing smile, her expression satisfied as she saw the beginnings of a connection forming. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable, rather, it was the pause before the first words of friendship. The two girls sat together and talked. Soon, Lyra returned carrying a tray. The aroma hit Shizu almost immediately, warm, savory, and unlike anything she had ever smelled before. Steam curled gently from the plate, carrying with it a mixture of spices and something faintly sweet. Placed before them was a dish unlike any Shizu had ever seen. Golden layers of baked grain wrapped around a rich, bubbling sauce, sprinkled with finely chopped herbs that glowed faintly with magicules. The fragrance was so inviting her stomach gave a small, traitorous growl. Shizu leaned forward slightly, eyes wide. What is this?" Lyra smiled softly, setting the plate down with care. "It's called Aurora casserole. My mother used to make this for me back in my world." It was her specialty. Shizu blinked, her fork pausing above the dish. "Your world? You mean, you're from somewhere else?" Lyra gave a small nod, her expression tinged with both pride and faint melancholy. "Yes, I'm not originally from here. After my mother passed away, I began running her restaurant in her place. This casserole became our most famous dish. It always reminded people of home." For a moment, silence lingered. Shizu felt her chest tighten at the gentle sadness in Lyra's voice. Slowly, she lowered her gaze, her words soft and careful. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring up something painful." Lyra's eyes softened, and she shook her head lightly. "No, it's all right. Talking about her doesn't hurt. It makes me feel like she's still here with me. And besides," she gestured at the dish with a warm smile, "this is her gift, and now I get to share it with all of you." Shizu's lips curved faintly, touched by the quiet strength in Lyra's words. She then tilted her head curiously, poking at a strange, greenish slice of vegetable on the plate with her fork. "And this? What is this thing?" Lyra's eyes lit up with amusement. "Ah, that's verdant okra. It doesn't grow in this world. But in the kitchen, there's something called a refrigerator. With it, you can get ingredients from anywhere, no matter what kind of dish you want to make." Shizu's eyes widened at the explanation, still trying to imagine such a convenient tool. She looked to Saphira, perhaps expecting her to comment, but froze. Saphira wasn't speaking at all. She was already halfway through her serving, crimson eyes shining with delight, cheeks faintly flushed as she chewed quickly. It was as if she had never tasted food this good in her entire life. Her nervous composure from before was gone. Now she was eating with the pure, unguarded joy of a child discovering sweetness for the first time. Shizu blinked at her, a laugh almost slipping out. "She really likes it, doesn't she?" Lyra giggled softly, covering her mouth with her hand. "It seems so. Finally, Shizu lifted her fork and took a small bite herself. The taste hit her instantly, warm layers of grain melting into a creamy sauce, the subtle sweetness of the verdant okra balancing the rich, savory spices. Her violet eyes widened as she pressed a hand lightly against her lips. This is incredible," she whispered. Lyra leaned forward, her eyes glinting with gentle pride. "You love my food, don't you?" Shizu nodded almost shyly, unable to hide her enjoyment. "Yes, I really do." Time slipped by in quiet comfort. After they had eaten, Lyra gathered the plates and carried them back to the kitchen. Shizu followed without hesitation, offering to help. The two of them washed dishes side by side, chatting softly. Lyra guided her through where things were kept, while Shizu listened intently, her hands moving gracefully as the simple task filled the air with warmth and familiarity. When everything was done, the three of them settled on the couch together. Conversation flowed more easily now, weaving between small stories, questions, and laughter. The unease from earlier was gone, replaced by the quiet spark of budding companionship. Then, as the chatter faded for a moment, Lyra suddenly spoke up. "Lord Rimuru will be here shortly," she said, her tone calm but carrying a hint of anticipation. "I let him know through thought communication that you're awake, Lady Shizu." Shizu's breath stilled. Her fingers curled lightly against her lap, heart quickening. And just as Lyra finished speaking, the door opened. The air shifted instantly. A presence swept into the room, heavy yet commanding. Rimuru stepped inside, his form radiating authority and dominance. Rimuru Pav. The air around the training ground shook with clashing steel and the heavy thud of bodies hitting the dirt. Dust rose in clouds, mixing with the smell of sweat, blood, and raw magicules. Rimuru sat at the edge, leaning casually with his arms crossed, watching the chaos unfold with a half-amused, half-annoyed look. After Lyra had literally thrown them all out of the house, there was no way to refuse. Now, Ethan, Karis, Rimuru, and even Veldora's group were being forced to train in earnest. Rimuru's golden eyes narrowed slightly as he saw the sight in front of him. The ogres, who had yet to evolve, were being beaten down, completely outclassed by the hobgoblins he had named earlier. The goblins, empowered through his names and evolution into hobgoblins, had grown into fierce warriors. The ogres, once so proud, now found themselves humiliated by the very beings they used to look down on. Their faces twisted with shame and frustration as their swords clashed uselessly against their opponents. Further off, two groups, one with 7 hobgoblins and ogres and the other with 9, were desperately trying to land a hit on Akatsuro and Hakuro. Akatsuro, Benimaru's father, stood tall with his crimson mane tied back, his broad chest gleaming faintly with sweat. His expression was calm yet stern, his aura radiating overwhelming dominance. Every swing of his blade cut the air with sharp authority, so precise that the ogres barely had time to blink before being disarmed or sent sprawling into the dirt. Beside him, Hakuru's weathered face remained composed, his eyes sharp like a hawk's. His movements were graceful yet merciless. Each parry was like flowing water, each counter like lightning. Clang, swish, thud. One after another, his opponent's attacks were dismantled and punished. To the ogres, it wasn't a spar, it was a merciless lesson. The younger ogres and hobgoblins panted heavily, their hands trembling around their blades. Some clenched their jaws so hard blood seeped from split lips, frustration boiling in their eyes. But still, they could not so much as graze either of the masters. Rimuru let out a quiet sigh. Guess evolution comes with its own walls. They'll have to taste defeat before they can grow. But the bigger mess was happening just behind them. Shion, violet hair flowing wildly, clashed with Benimaru in a storm of sparks. Their blades met again and again, ringing out with every strike. Shion's face twisted in fierce determination, sweat dripping as she roared with effort. Benimaru, sharp-eyed and steady, countered each blow with disciplined strength, his crimson gaze glowing faintly with battle lust. Beside them, Kaminari and Kain were swept into the fight as well. Kaminari's strikes were heavy and booming, Kain's fierce and wild, both of them pressing forward with raw ferocity. And right in the center of the storm was Karis. Calm, unshaken, his eyes cold and calculating. Every movement carried deadly intent as he unleashed Veldora's killing arts, not with a weapon, but with his own body. His fists cut the air like hammers, his kicks cracked like whips, each strike sharp enough to shatter bone, every motion backed by ruthless precision. Shion snarled as her sword was knocked aside. Bam! Karis's open palm slamming into her guard and forcing her back a step. Benimaru caught the next blow, their clash echoing like thunder as Karis's forearm met his blade, the sheer force pushing him off balance. Kaminari lunged from the flank, but Karis twisted smoothly, his knee driving into Kaminari's gut. Thud. Air exploding from his lungs. Kayan charged next, sword raised high, only for Karis to duck low and sweep his legs with a sharp spin. Crack. Sending him crashing to the ground. The three Kijin pressed together again, sweat dripping, faces burning with effort, their movements fierce and unyielding. But Karis matched them blow for blow, his footing firm, his strikes relentless. His body moved like a storm given form, each punch, each kick, each counter a reminder of the sheer difference in discipline and killing intent. But the most intense battle of all was between Sue and Ethan. Sue, calm and collected as always, moved like a shadow itself. His figure slipped in and out of sight, blurring into afterimages that seemed to rise from the darkness around him. Every step was silent, every strike precise, his movements sharper than any blade forged by mortal hands. His deep, unshaken eyes reflected not emotion but pure focus, like a honed edge cutting through the world. Ethan, however, stood unyielding. His blade hummed with dark magic, a faint purple-black aura coiling around it like a living curse. Each swing left trails of shadowy sparks in the air, and the ground hissed where his strikes landed. His expression was fierce, teeth gritted with effort, yet his eyes gleamed with exhilaration. He wasn't intimidated, he was alive in the battle. Clang, swish, crack. Sue's figure darted through the battlefield, flickering from angle to angle like a phantom, but Ethan's instincts caught him every time. His cursed blade intercepted shadow strikes, his counterattacks ripping through the air like thunderbolts. Sparks flew as steel clashed against clawed precision, shockwaves shuddering outward, tearing cracks into the dirt. One sudden feint from Sue brought him behind Ethan in a blur of shadows, his hand slicing for the neck, yet Ethan's blade roared with dark flames, spinning backward just in time. The clash sent a violent burst of energy outward, dust exploding across the ground. A faint line of blood appeared on Sue's cheek. For the first time in a long while, Sue's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. "You're impressive," he said evenly, voice steady even in the middle of the chaos. Ethan grinned, his knuckles bleeding as his grip tightened on his cursed blade. "Hey, you too, I'm actually enjoying this fight." Their voices carried no malice, only sharpened respect. Then, with no pause, they launched again. Sue vanished into shadows, weaving illusions and afterimages to overwhelm Ethan's senses. Ethan countered with bursts of dark energy flaring from his sword, cutting through false figures, forcing the real Sue into the open. Each collision rang like thunder, shockwaves rattling the entire training ground. Even Akatsuro, who had been calmly fighting earlier, frowned slightly, his sharp gaze narrowing as he followed Ethan's movements. His seasoned instincts told him this was no ordinary power. The younger ogres behind him trembled, unable to hide their fear. How can that human fight Lord Sue to a standstill?" one whispered. Another gritted his teeth, sweat dripping down his brow. "No, he's not human. No human can move like that." Yet no one could deny what they were witnessing. Ethan, a supposed outsider, matching strike for strike with an evolved Oni. And then, there were the four presences that could no longer be ignored, their very existence warping the atmosphere. The greater dragons Rimuru had named, now fully evolved into dragon lords. Their towering power made the air itself heavy, suffocating even the bravest of warriors. Zirion, the Earth Dragon Lord, male, tall, broad-shouldered, rugged brown hair tied back loosely, amber eyes glowing like molten rock. His scarred armor told tales of countless battles, resembling a gladiator who had stood against gods. When he stepped forward, the ground itself rumbled. His fists slammed into the dirt, raising stone pillars that surged like mountains against his sparring opponents. Every strike radiated unshakable stability, like the earth itself fought beside him. Afura, the water dragon lord, female, slender and graceful, long sapphire blue hair cascading like flowing rivers. Her icy blue eyes shimmered like endless seas. She wore a flowing gown of white and blue, glistening like woven liquid. When she moved, the air filled with mist, and with a flick of her hand, torrents of water crashed against those daring enough to face her. Her aura was serene yet suffocating, her strikes pulling foes as though they were drowning in the undertow of the ocean itself. Zephyros, the Wind Dragon Lord, male, lean and sharp-eyed, his silver-green hair whipped by unseen currents. His nomadic garb fluttered, his cloak trailing like the wings of a hawk. He fought with blinding speed, vanishing with each step, reappearing to strike from impossible angles. His sly smirk never faded, his movements playful yet deadly, each slash of his blade carrying the force of a storm, each gust sharp enough to cut stone. Agnara, the Flame Dragon Lord, female, tall and striking, her crimson hair blazed like living fire, ember-like eyes glowing with volcanic pride. She wore a battle dress of crimson and gold, its fabric shimmering like molten steel. Flames wove around her body like serpents, and every sweeping motion of her arm released waves of heat so intense the air cracked. Her strikes burned through defenses, consuming all in her path, her presence exuding dominance, like a queen born from the heart of a volcano. The training ground itself had turned into chaos. Stone shattered, waves surged, winds howled, and flames raged, each dragon lord unleashing their might in battle. The earth trembled with every clash, the atmosphere itself distorted by their overwhelming auras. The ogres and Kijin watching could barely breathe. Their knees threatened to buckle, their weapons shook in their hands. Just standing in the wake of these fights made them feel like fragile leaves before a storm. And amidst this battlefield of monsters and gods, Rimuru sat silently, his golden eyes flicking from one clash to another. Calm, unbothered, he measured everyone's growth, every mistake, every display of power. At the corner of his lips, a faint smile formed. Then he turned his head slightly, only to see Veldora sitting beside him, happily munching on something, completely ignoring the carnage. Rimuru's eyebrow twitched. Without hesitation, he smacked Veldora hard on the head. Why do something like that instead of relaxing properly? Veldora, rubbing his head with a sulky expression, replied, I cannot train with them because they will die. Sometime later, Rimuru and Veldora were lounging lazily at the edge of the training grounds, the dragon munching noisily on a pile of snacks while Rimuru nursed a cup of tea. Their casual banter was interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps, steady, deliberate, carrying the weight of discipline. Hakuro, the old master, stopped before them, bowing deeply. Both brothers shifted their gazes toward him, Rimuru raising an eyebrow while Veldora tilted his head, still chewing. Lord Rimuru, Hakuro began, his tone respectful, may I make a request? Rimuru blinked once, then leaned back, curiosity flickering in his golden eyes. A request, huh? All right, Hakuro, tell me, what kind of request do you want to make? The old swordsman straightened, his lined face calm but his words carrying unusual weight. I would like you to train with us. Only once, so that the young warriors may learn something from your strength. The words dropped like a stone in water. What? Rimuru muttered. Veldora froze mid-bite, his snack falling from his hand. Did he just? His booming voice cut through the air, disbelief painted across his face. But Rimuru didn't laugh. Slowly, a grin, sharp and dangerous, slid across his lips. His golden eyes gleamed with a predatory edge, sending a shiver even down Hakuru's disciplined spine. Hey, interesting, Rimuru murmured. Then, leaning forward, his voice dropped into something playful, yet merciless. Fine, I'll do it, but only under one condition. He rose to his feet. The faintest leak of aura rolled out of him, subtle but heavy enough to make the ground tremble beneath his step. His black ponytail unraveled, strands of his long hair whipping free in the wind like waves of ink. I will only fight the strong ones, not the weak. My opponents will be the Kijin, Ethan, Sue, and the Dragon Lords. His smile widened, sharp as a blade. Tell every ogre and hobgoblin to clear the training ground. Hakuro stiffened, his composure faltering for the first time. You mean, you will face them all, alone? Rimuru's grin turned wicked. Exactly. And one more thing. His golden eyes glowed, chilling and mesmerizing. You all have to gang up on me. I'll be alone on my side. For a heartbeat, silence ruled. Then Hakuro bowed deeply, his voice steady but his heart hammering. As you command. The news spread like wildfire. Murmurs rippled through the ogres and hobgoblins as they vacated the field, their faces twisted between awe and dread. This would be the first time many of them would witness Rimuru fight in earnest. Excitement and fear hung in the air like crackling thunder. And at last, the field cleared. On one side stood Rimuru, his long black hair now untied, flowing wildly in the breeze. His golden eyes shone with a gleam equal parts playful and terrifying. He twirled a conjured blade effortlessly in his hand, his stance casual, yet predatory. On the other side, his challengers. Sue, unreadable but sharp, his expression carved from stone. Ethan, teeth bared in anticipation, fists clenched, aura flaring. Benimaru, flames dancing along his crimson blade, eyes narrowed in focus. Xian, her violet gaze burning with determination, her greatsword held firm. Karis, face cold, his killing intent spilling like frost. Kaminari and Kayan, pride blazing, their bodies tense and ready. Akatsuro, his calm presence like an immovable mountain. Hakuro himself, eyes fierce, steel in every line of his body. And behind them, the Dragon Lords. Zirion, steady as stone. Afura, aura flowing like the endless sea. Zephyros, storm winds whispering around his frame. Agnara, flames wreathing her like a queen's mantle. Their combined pressure made the air heavy, the atmosphere warping as though the heavens themselves bent beneath their weight. And yet, even united, they could not mask the nervous tension gnawing at them. Only Ethan and Karis truly understood how deep the abyss of Rimuru's power ran. The others still thought there might be hope. Rimuru chuckled, raising his hand. A dome of shimmering light enveloped the entire field, a barrier so dense it silenced the world outside. All right then, his voice slid like silk through the air. Let's begin. Inside his mind, his calm voice reached out. Seal, give me a completely new sword style. I don't want them glimpsing my true hazy style. Ufufu tilde as you wish. I'll make you look even cooler than usual. Rimuru sighed mentally. Really? Don't worry, master. You're already so dazzling that half of them are trembling just from your hair being untied. He rolled his eyes. You're enjoying this too much. Of course I am. Watching you dominate them will be very entertaining. A blade appeared in Rimuru's hand, unfamiliar yet perfect in its weight. He gave it a light swing, smiling faintly. Come at me, all of you. The words struck like thunder. Sue vanished into shadows, Ethan roared forward, Benimaru's flames lit the air, the Dragon Lords unleashed their power. The field became chaos as every warrior threw themselves at him in unison. And Rimuru laughed. 2 hours later, the training ground lay in ruins. Craters scarred the earth, scorch marks streaked the stone, entire sections of the field reduced to rubble. The air was thick with smoke and the fading echoes of magic. And scattered across it, every challenger lay defeated. Sue knelt, his shadow clones dissolved, his breathing ragged. Benimaru's blade lay broken, his flames sputtering weakly. Xian's greatsword was cracked, her body trembling from exhaustion. Karis lay flat, eyes blazing with frustration even as he coughed blood. Ethan, bruised and battered, was grinning through split lips, his fists limp at his sides. Hakuro, his old body aching, was on one knee, head bowed in respect despite his defeat. Akatsuro, Kaminari, and Kayan lay collapsed, barely able to lift their heads. Even the mighty Dragon Lords had fallen, their auras fading. Zirion was buried half in rubble, Apiachiare's body was steaming with evaporated water, Zephyros' storms had dissipated, and Ignara's flames sputtered like dying embers. Every single one of them, defeated. And in the center of it all, Rimuru stood. Untouched, unscathed. His long black hair fluttered freely around him like the cloak of a demon king, his golden eyes glowing faintly in the fading light. His conjured blade gleamed flawlessly, without a single scratch. He alone remained standing. In his mind, Ciel's teasing voice chimed again. How was that, master? Did you enjoy showing off for them? Rimuru smirked faintly, his gaze sweeping over the fallen warriors. Hey, maybe just a little. Ufufu tilde a liar, you loved every second of it. For once, Rimuru didn't deny it. The training ground was silent, only the faint crackle of ruined earth and the groans of the defeated lingered. Dust hung in the air, slowly settling over broken stones and scorched ground. The once orderly field now looked like a battlefield torn apart by gods. The ogres who had been watching from the sidelines trembled, their eyes wide in disbelief. Their knees weakened, some nearly collapsing where they stood. They could not even stand before the beings Rimuru had just crushed without effort: Kijin, their most powerful warriors, and even the Dragon Lords themselves, beings that made the air tremble just by existing. And yet, Rimuru hadn't taken a single scratch. Not one. His black hair, now untied and swaying like silk in the wind, only made him seem more untouchable, like a demon king wrapped in human flesh. Some of the younger ogres staggered back, cold sweat dripping down their faces. Impossible. Lord Rimuru defeated them all, like they were nothing. We couldn't even look at those warriors without shaking, and he. Their words cracked, voices breaking as they tried to make sense of what they had just witnessed. Their shock bordered on terror, but beneath it was awe so deep it made their hearts quake. That awe grew into reverence, a realization that they were standing before someone who wasn't merely strong, he was absolute. The hobgoblins, too, were overwhelmed, but their reactions were different. For them, it was more than fear, it was pride, raw and unshakable. Their chests swelled, tears welling in their eyes as they clutched at each other. Rigurd, voice breaking with emotion, fell to his knees and bowed deeply, his forehead pressing into the dirt. Lord Rimuru, our master, he is truly divine. His words carried into the hearts of the others. Soon, more hobgoblins wept openly, their bodies trembling with overwhelming devotion. They shouted Rimuru's name like a prayer, tears of pride streaking their cheeks. And then there was Gobta. Unlike the rest, he was crouched on the ground, eyes glued elsewhere. Specifically, to Xian's chest as she lay collapsed, her armor torn slightly from the battle. His mouth hung open in a dumb grin, eyes sparkling like a fool. Nice, he whispered under his breath, drool threatening to drip. Whack! A nearby hobgoblin smacked him on the back of the head, hissing in frustration. Idiot! Have some respect, our Lord Rimuru just... Gobta only rubbed his head with a sheepish grin, still sneaking peeks when he thought no one noticed. Then, the heavy atmosphere broke. Foo-ha-ha-ha! A booming laugh echoed across the ruined field, shaking everyone to their core. Heads snapped toward the sound, eyes wide with dread. Veldora, the storm dragon, stood, brushing dust from his clothes as if nothing had happened. His golden eyes gleamed with wild excitement as he strode forward, each step radiating confidence and battle hunger. Hey, brother! His voice carried like thunder, bouncing against the barrier that enclosed the field. Why are you bullying the weaklings? If you want a real fight, fight me. Besides, he grinned wide, sharp teeth flashing. I've been wanting to test the weapon you gifted me. The words struck the onlookers like lightning. Gasps erupted from every corner of the crowd. Ogres and hobgoblins froze, their blood running cold. Some even stumbled back in fear. Veldora, our guardian, dirty Veldora-sama, is going to fight. Lord Rimuru, this isn't training anymore. This is suicide. To their voices wavered, torn between terror and disbelief. To them, Veldora was an untouchable guardian, a storm given flesh. And yet now, he was about to fight the very being who had just defeated their strongest without effort. The tension reached its absolute peak. The spectators' hearts pounded so loud it almost drowned out the silence between the two brothers. Rimuru's smirk widened, golden eyes gleaming with mischief. His untied hair danced in the wind, catching the light like threads of midnight silk. Oh, you're serious, Veldora? His voice carried sharp amusement, yet something darker lingered underneath, an edge that sent shivers down every spine. Then, with a flick of his wrist, he pulled out vials of shimmering liquid and tossed them onto the collapsed warriors. The potions burst in radiant glow, bathing the wounded in a gentle yet overwhelming light. Slowly, one by one, they stirred, wounds closing, bruises fading, exhaustion easing just enough for them to stand again. Their eyes widened as they realized what had happened, only to freeze when Rimuru's gaze swept over them. That smile, cold, merciless, yet utterly calm, froze them in place. Get out of the field, Rimuru said, his voice cutting sharper than any blade. Stay, and you'll end up dead. No one dared to argue. Not even the proudest among them. Even the Dragon Lords, their pride stung, swallowed their words and bowed their heads before retreating. One by one, they filed out of the barrier, the weight of Rimuru's words pressing into their bones like chains. Once the last of them had cleared the ground, Rimuru turned back to his brother. His hair flowed freely in the wind, his aura sharp and suffocating, like a blade forged from the void. With a single motion, Rimuru raised his hand, and once again, a shimmering dome of light shimmered into existence, rising high above the battlefield and sealing them in. The outside world faded, leaving only the heavy silence of anticipation within. Rimuru's golden eyes slid toward his brother. His smirk curved into something sly as he tilted his head. "So, Veldora, where's your weapon? I don't see anything. Don't tell me you're planning to fight barehanded. What happened to that big sword I gave you?" Veldora only grinned, a childlike gleam of mischief in his gaze. Slowly, he lifted his right hand. Resting in his palm wasn't the mighty greatsword Rimuru remembered, but a simple, unassuming metal handle. Rimuru's brow twitched. He crossed his arms, unimpressed. "Ah, you're joking, right? You seriously want to fight me with that? A handle?" Veldora chuckled, his deep voice vibrating through the dome. His grin only widened as his thumb pressed down on a small switch near the hilt. Bezitum MMM. A beam of blazing orange light shot out from the handle with a sharp, electric hum. The glow bathed the battlefield in fiery brilliance, and the unmistakable sound echoed through the air. Rimuru froze. His jaw went slack. His brain flatlined. "Oi! Oi 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 oi! That's a lightsaber!" His voice cracked, finger jabbing at the blade of pure energy. "Where the hell did you get that thing?" One Veldora's grin was smug, proud, and annoyingly self-satisfied. "Hey, I happened to watch a series from your world, brother. I believe it was called Star Wars?" He spun the blazing weapon lazily, the hum reverberating like a challenge. "That's where I first learned of this lightsaber. So, when my sword evolved into a mythical weapon, it decided to take this form." Rimuru slapped his forehead. You're telling me my legendary mythical grade sword, the one I gave you, turned into that? This is illegal. Absolutely illegal. Forget this world. Even Disney lawyers couldn't handle this." One inside his head, Ciel's calm, playful voice chimed in. "Master, your dramatics are amusing, but Veldora is correct. Your current weapons cannot withstand prolonged contact with that lightsaber. It is essentially condensed plasma stabilized by energy manipulation. Quite efficient." "Wait, what?" Rimuru's expression twisted. "You mean to tell me that ridiculous glowstick is actually dangerous?" "Indeed. Highly dangerous. Although, I must admit, seeing you panic over a toy from your previous world is delightful." "Oi! Not the time, Ciel. On the contrary, Master. It is always the time." Veldora twirled the blade again, the orange trail cutting arcs through the air with sizzling sounds. His smirk widened. "Well, brother? What will you do? Surely you won't face me empty-handed." Rimuru clicked his tongue, the grin slowly returning to his lips. "Tch. Fine then." With a wave of his hand, shadows gathered and twisted in his grip. A scythe emerged, dark crimson etched across its sleek blade, pulsing with a sinister aura. The air grew heavy with its presence, pressing down on the battlefield. Rimuru rested the scythe against his shoulder, golden eyes gleaming with sharp excitement. "Scythe origin blood, huh? Guess you're up." Veldora's laughter shook the ground. His blazing lightsaber clashed against the scythe's aura, sparks of energy crackling between them even before they touched. And now, with both weapons drawn, the battlefield trembled, ready to witness a clash no one could ever forget. The moment both weapons materialized, the atmosphere shifted. Rimuru's golden eyes gleamed beneath his untied hair, the dark strands whipping wildly in the rising pressure. Across from him, Veldora's grin widened, his orange lightsaber humming with lethal energy. Neither moved. Then, boom! An invisible collision detonated between them as their auras flared to full strength. Haki, raw and unrestrained, clashed in the center of the dome like two titans pressing their wills against one another. The barrier groaned, vibrating with the sheer force of their presence. Outside, even through the shimmering wall, ogres and hobgoblins fell to their knees. Their hearts pounded, breath stolen from their lungs. Just standing near the battlefield felt like being crushed beneath an endless ocean. With this pressure, it's like, my soul is being squeezed. Inside, Rimuru smirked, voice sharp and teasing. "Hey, not bad, Veldora. Didn't think you could bring out this much haki without smashing half the forest." Veldora barked a laugh, golden eyes blazing. Of course. I am the storm dragon, after all. You're not the only one who can flex a little, brother. The ground cracked beneath their feet as their haki continued to rise, one golden, sharp and suffocating, the other primal, storm-like, and wild. Sparks of energy snapped through the air where their wills collided. Then, in the blink of an eye, both vanished. Clong! Scythe met lightsaber in an eruption of sparks. The shriek of plasma grinding against cursed steel echoed like thunder. Rimuru twisted his scythe in a brutal arc, forcing Veldora back, but the Dragon Lord met him with a roaring overhead strike, the orange glow blinding in its brilliance. Ha! Veldora swung with reckless joy, each blow heavy enough to crater the ground. TCH. Too slow. Rimuru darted around him, his scythe weaving elegant yet vicious arcs, crimson light trailing behind every slash. Their clash ripped the battlefield apart. Every step shattered stone. Every strike warped the barrier walls. Energy waves exploded outward with every impact, rattling the earth far beyond Tempest's borders. Master, you seem excited. Ciel's voice was smooth, almost amused. Hey, maybe a little. It's not every day I get to smack Veldora around. Careful. If you grin any wider, you'll split your face. Oi! The fight escalated. Veldora's lightsaber roared through the air, its searing edge slicing craters into the ground as Rimuru danced around him, countering with sharp, precise swings of origin blood. Sparks rained like a storm of stars every time they collided. Raahh! Veldora bellowed, slamming the lightsaber down. The ground beneath Rimuru split into a glowing trench. Rimuru spun, scythe flashing crimson, parrying the strike with effortless grace. His hair whipped in the shockwave, golden eyes blazing. You fight like a kid swinging a toy, Veldora. Toy? Veldora's jaw dropped, then curled into a feral grin. Brother, this toy could cleave stars. Sure, if you don't drop it first. Their laughter, sharp and wild, cut through the storm of destruction. Then, beatst! Rimuru's eyes flicked as a pulse brushed against his mind. A telepathic message. Lyra's voice, urgent yet bright. Lord Rimuru, Shizu has awakened. For a moment, his heart stopped. His grip faltered, golden eyes widening. Shizu, she's awake. Veldora lunged, lightsaber sweeping in a wide arc. Rimuru, caught in the sudden rush of excitement, reacted instinctively. His scythe whirled, crimson aura flaring. Crash. The clash sent a shockwave tearing through the dome. Veldora staggered back, blinking in surprise as his lightsaber spun free from his grip, flung high into the air. Wah! Before Rimuru could think, his scythe lashed out. A clean slice, instinct-driven. Sheeked! The orange blade flickered, sputtered, then shattered into sparks as the handle clattered to the ground, smoking and lifeless. No! Veldora howled, dropping to his knees like a man mourning the death of a loved one. My lightsaber! Rimuru froze, blinking between the broken handle and his scythe. Oops. Well done, master. You destroyed his toy. Ciel's voice was teasing Silk. Shall I prepare a pacifier for him next? 2 inches not helping, Ciel. Veldora clutched the ruined hilt, tears welling in his eyes. How could you? That was my treasure. My one and only mythical glowstick. Rimuru's face paled. Damn it. Shizu's awake. I don't have time for this. He tossed the scythe aside, shadows swallowing it whole, and scrambled toward the edge of the dome. I'll make you a new one, okay? Something even cooler. Just stop crying. Without waiting for an answer, Rimuru bolted, his figure blurring as he sprinted toward the one name that had seized his heart. Behind him, Veldora's wail echoed through the battlefield, shaking the air like thunder. Brother, you can't replace a lightsaber. Chapter 17. Shizu Tempest. Rimuru stood in front of his house, staring at the faint reflection in the glass window beside the door. He tugged at his collar for the 5th time, straightened the hem of his black jacket, then fussed with his hair again, as if glaring at it long enough might magically make it look different. Plus normally, he wore it tied neatly in a ponytail, practical, efficient, and less likely to get in his eyes during a fight. But now it flowed freely, spilling down his back like a sheet of midnight silk. He tilted his head, studying the change, before frowning slightly. Ciel, be honest with me. How do I look without the ponytail? Think Shizu will like it? You look more girl-like. Her voice carried no hesitation, but it wasn't neutral either. It was sharp, teasing, yet just a little too possessive. Rimuru's golden eyes narrowed. His lips curved into a slow smirk as he muttered, "Oi, are you jealous?" A long pause followed. Opening square bracket ... "It's because Shizu is getting more attention from you, master." This time, her tone dipped, sulky, almost pouting. Rimuru's reflection showed his amusement softening into something gentler. He let out a quiet chuckle, shaking his head as warmth crept into his expression. "Don't be ridiculous. You're my eternal partner, Seal. Nobody, absolutely nobody, could ever replace you. You've been with me since the very beginning. When I first reincarnated into this world, when I was completely lost, you were there. You're my first wife, my guiding star. Honestly, I don't think I could survive this world without you." For once, Seal faltered. The sharpness in her tone melted, replaced by something almost shy. "Yes, honey, you are right." Rimuru froze. His whole body stiffened as his reflection stared back in disbelief. "Wait, did you just call me honey? It's just your imagination." "Like hell it is," he groaned, dragging a palm down his face. His cheeks betrayed him with a warm flush, and the grin tugging at his lips ruined any hope of staying serious. "Geez, you're impossible," he muttered, exhaling one last steadying breath before smoothing his hair back into place. With a hand on the doorknob, he pushed it open. The living room was softly lit, the warm glow of the lamps chasing away the shadows of evening. 3 figures sat on the couch. Shizu was in the middle, calm as always, her posture graceful yet relaxed. To her sides, Lyra and Saphira leaned toward her, their body language easy, as if their earlier conversation had been light and comforting. But the moment Rimuru stepped inside, the air shifted. 3 pairs of eyes turned toward him, though his gaze locked onto only one. Shizu. His steps faltered for the briefest second. She looked different. Her long black hair shimmered under the lamplight, strands catching a faint glow as if brushed with starlight. The gentle warmth in her eyes was still there, but layered beneath it was something deeper, a quiet strength, a presence that hadn't existed before. Rimuru's golden gaze lingered, and his heart gave a small, uncharacteristic stutter. "Is it just me, or did she become even more beautiful?" he whispered under his breath. "Not your imagination," Seal chimed softly, almost reverently. "Her evolution has altered her very existence. That radiance you see is real." "Great. Just what I needed," Rimuru muttered, trying to mask the nervous tug breaking at the corners of his lips. Shizu caught him staring. She blinked, tilted her head slightly, her composure faltering. A faint blush colored her cheeks, and she quickly looked away, fingers curling against the fabric of her dress. Lyra and Saphira noticed instantly. Their gazes flicked between Rimuru and Shizu, but while Lyra's expression softened knowingly, Saphira's brows furrowed with confusion. "Shizu blushed?" Saphira's eyes darted from Shizu to Rimuru again, struggling to piece it together. Shizu had never reacted like that to anyone before. To see her newly composed friend flush like a shy girl, it didn't make sense. Lyra, on the other hand, read the atmosphere immediately. Without warning, she reached out, lacing her fingers with Saphira's and tugging her to her feet. "Come on," Lyra said, her smile faint but teasing. "Let's give them some space." But Saphira blinked, still confused as her eyes flicked back toward the two. Lyra leaned closer, her smile turning secretive. "You'll understand later." And with that, she pulled Saphira toward the door. "We'll leave you two to talk," Saphira managed to say lightly, though her gaze lingered on Rimuru for just a moment longer, searching for answers she couldn't find. The door clicked shut behind them, silence filling the space they left behind. Rimuru's eyes returned to Shizu. She sat with her hands folded neatly in her lap, her expression calm on the surface, but the faint pink blooming across her cheeks betrayed another story entirely. His lips curved into a small, unintentional smile. Now, it was just the two of them. Rimuru moved closer, settling beside Shizu on the couch. Without hesitation, he placed his hand gently over hers. Shizu felt the warmth of his hand against hers, a steady presence that made her chest tighten. It wasn't just heat, it was comfort, safety, and something she couldn't quite name. Her eyes lingered on their joined hands for a moment longer before she looked up at him. "Well, Shizu, how are you feeling?" Rimuru inquired softly, his golden gaze resting on her with quiet concern. "Honestly? Better than I've ever felt before," Shizu replied, her smile radiating warmth. For the first time in years, her body felt light, free of the chains that had bound her for so long. So, can you tell me exactly how you helped me? First of all, I removed Ifrit from your body and replaced him with another spirit, Rimuru explained calmly, his tone even but his eyes watchful, studying her reaction. Shizu tilted her head slightly, curiosity glinting in her eyes. And what kind of spirit did you replace Ifrit with? Well, Rimuru said, leaning back slightly with a small, almost playful smirk, considering your title as the Conqueror of Flames, I wanted to maintain the flame element. So now, you're housing a Flame Lord named Ignis. Eh? Flame Lord? Shizu exclaimed, her eyes widening as shock painted her face. Her breath caught in her throat, and her fingers instinctively tightened around his. I could barely keep a greater flame spirit under control. How am I supposed to handle a Flame Lord? Shizu, calm down. Take a breath, Rimuru soothed, his voice lowering as his hand moved reassuringly to her shoulder. His touch was steady and grounding, and he waited until he felt the tension leave her body before continuing. His tone was firm but gentle, almost protective. Listen to me, you won't have any problems with Ignis. I created him myself, and he's an egoless spirit. He won't cause you any trouble, unless I specifically command it. You created a Flame Lord spirit? Shizu's surprise was plain in her voice, her eyes widening again as disbelief and awe flickered across her face. Yes, he answered simply, a small smile tugging at his lips as though it were no big deal. It's not that hard for me. In his mind, Ciel's voice cut in sharply. You are once again taking credit, Master. I was the one who created it, not you. Shut up, Ciel. Let me flex, he shot back inwardly, fighting to keep his smug expression in place. Shizu blinked, then let out a soft, almost disbelieving chuckle, her fingers brushing against her lap. You know, it's refreshing to have a spirit who doesn't threaten to take over my body or harm the people I love. Her voice was quiet, tinged with bittersweet relief, but her smile carried a fragile hope that warmed Rimuru's chest. Moving on, Rimuru interjected gently, steering the conversation away from the shadows of Shizu's past. He didn't want her lingering there. The next step I took was creating a soul corridor between us, strengthening both your body and soul so you can harness and utilize the power of the Flame Lord, he explained, his words calm but precise. Shizu nodded slowly, though her eyes glazed slightly, her expression making it obvious she'd already given up trying to fully understand Rimuru's complex explanations. The only thing she knew for certain was that he had saved her, and in the process, made her stronger than she had ever dreamed of being. And lastly, I have gifted you an ultimate skill, he added, his tone almost casual as he materialized a piece of paper out of thin air, which he offered to her with deliberate care. Still reeling from Rimuru's last words, Shizu accepted the paper and began to read it. Kagetsuchi, Huo-ji Ja-ju 2, Lord of Crimson Flames, the sovereign who commands divine fire and bends the world's laws with sacred flame. Subskills. Crimson Dominion. Creates a divine territory under the wielder's absolute control. Enemies cannot teleport, cast most spells, or escape spatially. Laws of heat and combustion are rewritten. What should not burn, will. 1. Heaven's Pyre. Summons sacred crimson fire. Burns magicules, souls, and immortality-based traits. Ignores resistance, regeneration, and barriers. Flamebound Bastion. Barriers of compressed divine flame, unbreakable. Reflects or absorbs enemy attacks, magic, and even unique skills. Can reshape into prisms, multi-layered shields, or space folds. Crimson Judgment, divine execution authority. Temporarily suspends natural laws. Strikes directly at the core of skills and magic systems. Infernal Valkyrie Drive, full combat manifestation. Wings of red flame and a battle dress of divine fire. Blades become sentient, burning with predictive combat power. Massive physical enhancement plus real-time processing via mathematician. Crimson Archive, extension of Degenerate, refined by divine flame. Can copy and store unlimited unique skills. Can copy and wield up to 3 ultimate skills simultaneously. Copied skills may be further modified or fused. Cannot copy origin skills or divine authority. Rimuru-san, this is utterly absurd. Shizu exclaimed, her disbelief plain as she scanned the glowing list of skills. Crimson Dominion, Crimson Flames, Flamebound Bastion. I don't even know what half of these mean. Allow me to enlighten you, Rimuru replied with a smug grin, giving an exaggerated bow. First, Lord of Crimson Flames. You've been granted this skill because, right now, you're as strong as a newly crowned hero. Wait, are you telling me I'm as strong as Hiro-sama? Shizu gasped, eyes wide with shock. Nope, not even close, Rimuru said bluntly, making her shoulders drop. The hero you're thinking of could still defeat you before you even blink. However, he added with a reassuring smile, in your current state, you'd certainly give Leon a run for his money. It wouldn't be an easy fight, but I'm confident you'd come out on top. Well, I suppose that's something, Shizu muttered, unable to hide the faint twinge of disappointment on her face. Now, don't let that get to you, Rimuru said gently, his tone warm. After all, Ms. Hiro had plenty of time to polish her skills. He chuckled at his own little joke, though Shizu just blinked at him in confusion. Moving on, Rimuru continued, his expression brightening. Let's discuss Crimson Flames, one of my finest creations. You see, there are no naturally occurring crimson flames in this world. I combined stardust, black flames, and holy magic to forge flames that bypass fire immunity. I tailored them specifically for you, the Conqueror of Flames. Her eyes widened. You made that just for me? I also merged your unique skill, Degenerate, into your ultimate skill, he added casually, as though that wasn't an outrageous feat. Shizu blinked, then let out a small, incredulous laugh, shaking her head. Rimuru-san, I think you may have gone a little overboard. Not at all, Rimuru countered smoothly, pride swelling in his chest. At last, he understood why Seal enjoyed crafting absurdly overpowered skills so much. And finally, he said with a grin, the Crimson Archive. Now, this one you'll need to work for. The Crimson Archive could become one of your strongest trump cards in battle. It allows you to copy others' ultimate skills, from enemies or allies alike. One Shizu blinked in surprise, her brows furrowing. And why give me something like that? Because even after creating your ultimate skill, I wasn't satisfied about your safety, Rimuru admitted quietly. So I added this feature to make sure no opponent would ever overwhelm you. Her lips curved into a soft smile, touched with amusement. You really thought this through, huh? Well, don't get used to it, Rimuru teased, earning a shared laugh between them. Then his gaze softened. So, did you like your gift? Shizu tilted her head thoughtfully. At first, I was overwhelmed by how much it could do. But now that I think about it, I'd grown stagnant these past few years. This gives me a chance to move forward again. Her eyes shone with quiet determination as she added, in short. I love it. Great, Rimuru replied, his chest warming at the sight of her genuine smile. Shizu suddenly reached out, covering his hand with hers. There's something I need to ask. Rimuru blinked, leaning closer, curious. What is it? Her voice shook, fragile yet burning with feeling. Why are you doing all this for me, Rimuru? I know you care about me, but you even reversed time just to save me. Now you've rebuilt your entire kingdom, yet everything you once achieved is gone. Tears shimmered in her eyes. In the last timeline, you granted my every wish, saving the children, striking down Leon, and creating a world at peace. Shizu asked him, Rimuru, now you sacrificed everything for me. The words lingered in the air, heavy and unspoken. Then, with infinite tenderness, Rimuru raised his hand and cupped her cheek, his thumb tracing gently across her skin. His golden eyes softened, unwavering, brimming with quiet devotion. How could I ever call it a sacrifice, he whispered, steady and sure, when it was all for you? Shizu gasped, her breath catching, her lips parting as her heart leapt. Oh! Rimuru's gaze locked onto hers, unchanging, full of affection. A gentle smile touched his lips, carrying every ounce of warmth he felt. Because my everything is you. Shizu froze, her eyes widening as if the world had stopped moving around her. His words struck deeper than she ever imagined, stealing the air from her lungs. For a heartbeat, she simply stared at him, trembling, unable to believe someone could say something so openly, so sincerely, about her. Rimuru lifted a hand, brushing his knuckles gently against her cheek. His touch was soft and steady, grounding her spinning emotions. I love you, Shizu. That's why I did all this, he whispered, golden eyes never leaving hers. Before he could say anything else, Shizu suddenly threw herself against him. Rimuru yelped in surprise as he toppled backward, landing on the couch with Shizu pressed firmly on top of him. Her arms wrapped around him with desperate strength, holding him as though she never wanted to let go. For a moment, Rimuru blinked in shock, but then, a slow smile spread across his lips, and he hugged her back just as tightly. Shizu buried her face against his chest, shoulders trembling. Little tears slipped free, warm trails against her cheeks, as her voice came out broken but filled with emotion. "I love you too, Rimuru." Those words made Rimuru's chest tighten, happiness flooding him in a way he hadn't expected. He stroked her back soothingly before pulling back just enough to meet her gaze. "Shizu, there's something I want to ask you." Her teary eyes softened, her lips curving slightly as she wiped at them with the back of her hand. "What is it?" she asked quietly. "Well, I wanted to talk about us," Rimuru said, taking her hand into his and giving it a reassuring squeeze. His voice was gentle but earnest, specifically about what happened between us on the hilltop. "Oh." Shizu's cheeks colored faintly, her eyes lowering for a moment as that memory resurfaced. A shy, uncertain look crossed her face. "I'm not sure, Rimuru-san. My life before coming here wasn't exactly filled with pleasant experiences, so I've never really given much thought to things like relationships or love. I don't know where we go from here." One Rimuru's thumb brushed over her hand, his gaze steady and patient. "In that case, would you be willing to give us a chance?" he asked softly, hope lacing every word. Her eyes widened slightly. "Wait, are you asking?" "Yes, Shizu," Rimuru interrupted, leaning forward with a small but heartfelt smile. "I'm asking you, will you be my girlfriend?" His eyes glowed with warmth and affection, filled with a nervous anticipation that he couldn't quite hide. For a heartbeat, Shizu was stunned. She had never imagined anyone would ask her something like this in her lifetime. Until she met Rimuru, she wasn't even sure how much time she had left to live, let alone to dream. But now, his question filled her chest with warmth, and the nervous flicker in his golden eyes sent butterflies through her stomach, making her feel like a young girl again. And honestly, she loved that feeling. The memory of the hilltop 3 days ago, his closeness, his voice, his touch, was far too intoxicating for her to resist wanting more. So, instead of answering with words, Shizu leaned forward and captured his lips in a tender kiss. Rimuru's eyes widened at first, then fluttered shut as he melted into it. When they parted, Shizu gazed at him with a radiant, almost giddy smile. "I would love to be your girlfriend, Rimuru-san," she whispered, voice trembling with joy, before leaning in again to press her lips against his, sealing her answer with another kiss. Shizu finally lifted herself from Rimuru's chest, her hands still lingering against him as though reluctant to let go. A faint blush colored her cheeks, the warmth of their kiss still lingering. She tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear, her lips curving into the softest smile Rimuru had ever seen. Rimuru followed her with his gaze, golden eyes tracing her every movement as though afraid the moment might vanish if he looked away. His heart still raced, but instead of unease, it was a warm, steady rhythm, an unshakable reminder that she was here, with him. "You know," Shizu began quietly, her voice tinged with something fragile. "I never thought I'd feel this way. Love, happiness, it always felt too far away for someone like me." She glanced down, then back at him, eyes shimmering faintly. "But then you appeared, Rimuru. You gave me hope when I had none left." Rimuru leaned forward, his hand brushing hers. His smile was small but certain. "Then let me promise you this, Shizu, you'll never be alone again. Not in this life, not ever." Her breath caught, and though her lips curved into a teasing smile, her voice wavered. "You always know exactly what to say, don't you?" "Maybe because I actually mean it," he replied, half playful, half serious. Her laugh was soft and musical, easing the last remnants of tension. She slipped her fingers between his, holding on tightly. For a moment, silence wrapped around them, warm, quiet, and complete. Finally, Rimuru broke it with a spark of mischief in his eyes. "Shizu, I have something more for you." Her brows lifted. "More?" "Yes," he said, squeezing her hand gently. "But you'll have to trust me. Just close your eyes, hold on tight, and tell me when you're ready." Shizu's curiosity flickered, but the trust in her gaze never wavered. "All right," she whispered, tightening her grip on him. She closed her eyes. "I'm ready." Rimuru rose, guiding her up with him. His arm slipped around her waist, pulling her close. The air shifted almost instantly, a hum of magicules filling the space. The ground beneath them seemed to ripple, weightless, as if the world itself was folding. Shizu felt it, the strange, impossible sensation of space bending around them. But she didn't open her eyes. She trusted him more than anything. A heartbeat later, Rimuru's voice reached her, calm and steady. "Okay, Shizu, open your eyes." She blinked, and the breath caught in her throat. The familiar room was gone. They stood upon a quiet mountain ledge. Below them stretched a vast city, its skyline etched against the horizon, skyscrapers gleaming under the fading sun. Neon lights flickered faintly in the distance. The cool evening air carried scents she hadn't known for decades: earth, smoke, and faint traces of food stalls. Her lips parted in disbelief. "Rimuru, where are we?" He turned to her, still holding her hand as if it were the most natural thing in the world. His golden eyes softened, carrying both warmth and pride. "We're in your birthplace, Shizu," he said gently. Her eyes widened, trembling as the truth sank in. "You mean?" Rimuru's smile deepened, tender and unwavering. "Yes, we're in Japan." Shizu's breath trembled as her gaze swept across the skyline. Neon lights flickered in the distance, the faint hum of a city alive reaching her ears. Her heart pounded, emotions clashing violently within her chest. Home, after so long, but do I even belong here anymore? Her hands clenched against her chest as tears welled in her eyes. Memories she had locked away flooded back, the smell of street food, the sound of festival drums, the laughter of children running through crowded alleys. Yet with it came pain, the reminder of how she had been torn from this world, her life twisted into something unrecognizable. Rimuru watched her silently, golden eyes steady, giving her the space to feel. At last, he lifted a hand, magicules shimmering softly around his fingertips. With a gentle wave, their surroundings rippled. "We can't exactly walk around like this, can we?" he teased lightly. In an instant, their attire shifted. Shizu blinked down at herself in shock. Her plain white outfit was gone, replaced with a soft cream-colored dress that flowed gracefully with every movement. The fabric fell in layered tiers, cinched at the waist with a delicate tie. Long sleeves brushed her wrists, their edges gathered neatly, giving her an elegance she hadn't felt in years. She touched the fabric, stunned, her cheeks glowing with a faint blush. Rimuru chuckled, brushing at his now modern jacket. "There. Much better. We'll blend in just fine." For the first time in decades, Shizu's lips curved into a bright, unrestrained smile. The heavy conflict in her heart hadn't vanished, but in its place was something else: excitement. "Hope, come on, Rimuru," she said suddenly, her hand darting out to catch his. Without waiting for his reply, she tugged at him, her voice breathless with childlike joy. "Let's go down. I want to see everything." Before Rimuru could protest, Shizu was already pulling him along, half dragging him down the mountainside toward the glowing city below. The descent from the mountain carried them into the glowing heart of Tokyo. Morning sunlight spilled across the horizon, painting the city in soft gold. Towers of glass and steel caught the light, gleaming like polished blades, while below, the streets were already alive with motion. Cars hummed in steady streams, office workers hurried along sidewalks, and the aroma of fresh bread and sizzling food drifted from cafes and stalls. Shizu's steps slowed as her gaze swept over the skyline. This was her home. Tokyo, the place where her life had started before being pulled into another world. Her chest tightened, emotions clashing, nostalgia, sorrow, and a fragile joy that she hadn't felt in years. She breathed in deeply, the faint scent of the city air carrying memories she thought she had lost. Rimuru noticed the way her fingers curled slightly against her chest, her shoulders trembling with unspoken feeling. Without a word, he slipped his hand into hers. She blinked, startled by the warmth, then looked up at him. His golden eyes were calm and steady, grounding her. A small, fragile smile formed on her lips, easing the storm in her chest just enough to breathe. "Come on," he said softly. "Let's enjoy it together." Their first stop was Shibuya Crossing, the famous scramble. The lights changed, and in an instant, hundreds of people surged forward from every direction, weaving past one another without a single collision. Rimuru whistled. "Wow, organized chaos. I love it." Hands tucked in his pockets, he stepped into the stream of people like it was second nature. Shizu trailed after him, her steps hesitant at first, but she soon found herself falling into rhythm. For the first time in years, she felt like just another person in the crowd. Not a masked warrior, not a wandering spirit, just herself. When they reached the other side, they paused at the Hachiko statue. The bronze dog sat loyally in its place, a silent guardian of memories. Shizu's gaze lingered on it, her lips curving into a bittersweet smile. Always waiting, no matter how long it takes, she murmured. Rimuru tilted his head, watching her expression soften. He didn't press her for details, simply let the silence carry her thoughts. From there, Rimuru dragged her toward Harajuku's Takashita Street. The narrow stretch exploded with color and energy, shopfronts bursting with vivid signs, racks of quirky clothes spilling onto the sidewalks, and the air alive with chatter and laughter. Shizu blinked, her eyes darting from one display to another. It's so bright. Exactly. Rimuru grinned. This is perfect for us. Let's explore. He caught her wrist before she could object and pulled her along, weaving between the throngs of teens and tourists. Shizu stumbled after him, her cheeks warming at how natural he made it seem, as though they were just another young couple on a date. They stopped at a stall selling crepes, thin, delicate cones filled with cream, strawberries, and chocolate drizzle. Rimuru ordered one, then turned toward her with a mischievous glint. Here. Say, ew. He held it up as though feeding a child. Shizu's face went red instantly. Rimuru-san, don't treat me like that. But she still leaned forward, taking a small bite. Her lips brushed the edge of the crepe where his hand held it, the sweetness of cream and fruit melting on her tongue. Her eyes softened faintly. It's sweet. Rimuru smirked, leaning closer. Yeah, it fits you perfectly. Her cheeks flushed deeper as she turned away quickly, trying to hide the shy smile threatening to form. Later, the scent of baked cheese drew them to another stall. This one selling fluffy 10-yen cheese pancakes. The vendor placed one on a small plate, its golden surface bouncing lightly with every movement. Rimuru presented it with exaggerated seriousness. Behold, the legendary 10-yen cake. Shizu blinked skeptically. That doesn't look like 10 yen. Shush, don't ruin the magic. He tapped the side of the plate, making the pancake jiggle. Shizu let out a soft giggle despite herself. She leaned in and took a bite. A gooey string of melted cheese stretched between her lips and the pancake, wobbling comically before she hurried to slurp it up. Her cheeks burned as she tried to stifle a laugh. Rimuru's grin widened. Well, how is it? She swallowed, then smiled softly. It was fun. Not delicious? Not amazing? Just fun? He gasped dramatically, shaking his head. Guess I'll have to buy 10 more until you admit it's divine. Absolutely not, Shizu said quickly, though her eyes shone with amusement. Rimuru laughed, the sound warm and light, blending into the busy hum of the street. For the first time in decades, Shizu felt herself laughing too, not the restrained chuckle of a teacher nor the polite smile of a mask, but freely, like the young girl she once was. Their wandering eventually funneled them into a boutique tucked down a quieter side street, one of those little places where the light was soft, the music low, and everything seemed arranged to make you linger. The polished wooden floor creaked faintly beneath their steps, and racks of dresses hung like promises, pastels, linens, delicate prints, and a few bold pieces that shimmered under the lights. A faint scent of cotton, lavender, and lemon polish hung in the air. The bell above the door chimed as it shut behind them, and 2 shop attendants glanced up. Their gazes flickered first to Rimuru, who looked effortlessly striking even in casual clothes, then to Shizu at his side. One whispered to the other, cheeks pink. Shizu caught it but tried to ignore it, pretending to study a display of scarves instead. Rimuru, of course, was already prowling through racks like a hunter sniffing out prey. His golden eyes gleamed with boyish delight, his fingers brushing along silks and cottons until he found something that made him stop. He plucked a pastel blue dress from the rack and turned, holding it aloft as though he'd just discovered buried treasure. Oh, this will be good, he announced with a flourish, mischief tugging at his lips. Shizu. Try one of these. Her lips parted in half protest, half resignation. Rimuru-san, this is, nope, no arguments. He pushed the dress gently into her hands and steered her toward the fitting room with the kind of grin no one could win against. Go on, I insist. Shizu sighed, defeated, though the soft sound earned her a quiet chuckle from a passing attendant. The curtain whispered shut behind her, muting the boutique's background music into a muffled hum. She stared at the dress in her hands for a long moment, so delicate, so unnecessary compared to the armor and uniforms she had always worn. Clothes meant to protect, to hide, never simply to be admired. Still, she slipped it on. When the curtain drew back and she stepped out, the boutique seemed to pause with her. The pastel fabric floated around her frame like a watercolor come to life. The dress skimmed her shoulders in soft, rounded straps, dipped into a gentle neckline, and cinched at her waist before spilling into flowing folds that brushed just past her knees. Her dark hair framed her face, loose strands brushing against her cheeks, and the pale color made her eyes seem darker, deeper. Shizu's hands fidgeted lightly at her sides, betraying her nerves, and her lashes lowered as though afraid to meet his gaze. "So, how do I look?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. For once, Rimuru didn't tease. His eyes softened, all the usual playfulness stilled by something heavier and far more sincere. He let the silence hold for a beat, choosing his words carefully, then said, voice low and steady, like the moment the sun rises, "Something so beautiful you can't look away." The words hit harder than she expected. Shizu froze, her blush rushing to the tips of her ears, and she instinctively pressed a hand against her burning cheek. She nearly spun back toward the dressing room to hide, but something kept her rooted there, perhaps vanity, perhaps hope, perhaps the way he was looking at her as though the entire shop had vanished. Rimuru grinned then, clapping his hands once in delighted applause. "Perfect. But I'm not done. Fashion show time. Try the others." He handed her 2 more dresses, one a soft mint with a square neckline and flowing skirt, the other a cream-colored piece with fine embroidered flowers at the hem. The mint dress made her look younger, gentler, almost like a different version of herself, one untouched by battles or burdens. The cream dress, simple but elegant, had an understated grace that drew polite smiles of approval from the shop attendants and passing customers alike. Each time she emerged, she wanted to shrink back into the curtain, but there was a flutter in her chest too, a lightness that came from the simple act of being seen, of being told she looked lovely. By the 3rd round, she huffed, folding her arms as her cheeks remained stubbornly pink. Happy now? Ecstatic. Rimuru's grin widened, though behind it was a softness that lingered. Without hesitation, he carried all 3 dresses to the counter and paid, sliding the receipts across with the casual ease of someone who treated this as entirely natural. Back on the street, Shizu carried the bag carefully at first, the paper handles crinkling under her grip, but Rimuru stopped her with a flick of his wrist. The bag shimmered once before vanishing into his imaginary space. "There. No need to carry it around." Shizu blinked, then let out a faint laugh, the sound slipping from her before she could stop it. Convenient as always. The city's energy swelled around them again as they walked, neon signs beginning to flicker awake and footsteps hurrying by. Shizu glanced at Rimuru from the corner of her eye. His earlier words still echoed in her chest, stirring something warm and fragile she hadn't felt in years. She hesitated, then spoke softly, almost as if testing the ground beneath her. "You really think I looked beautiful?" Rimuru tilted his head, his grin softer this time, his golden eyes unwavering. "I don't think. I know." Her blush bloomed all over again, and for a fleeting moment, she almost believed she could stay in that little boutique forever. The night air was cool as they reached the top of Tokyo's skytree. Glass walls stretched all around them, revealing a breathtaking sea of lights that stretched endlessly across the horizon. Tokyo glowed beneath their feet, streets winding like golden threads, towers crowned with neon halos, and rivers catching the silver moonlight like polished glass. Shizu stepped forward slowly, almost hesitantly, until she stood close to the window. She pressed her hand against the cool glass, her dark eyes widening as the city's brilliance reflected in them. Her lips parted in a soft, breathless sound, as if the sheer beauty of the view had stolen her voice. Rimuru joined her, but his gaze wasn't on the skyline. Instead, he watched her, the way awe softened her features and how the faint city glow brushed across her skin like a painter's touch. The city was beautiful, yes, but compared to her, it didn't even come close. A quiet silence lingered between them, broken only by Shizu's soft exhale. She turned slightly toward him, her expression carrying both reluctance and sadness. "Rimuru, I think it's time we go back to Tempest. Am I right?" Rimuru tilted his head, golden eyes gleaming with mischief before curving into a playful smirk. "Go back? Who said anything about going back now? We're staying here for months." Her entire body stiffened, eyes snapping wide as though he'd just told her the sky was falling. What? Rimuru-san. She grabbed at his sleeve, panic lacing her voice. How can you say that? You have responsibilities in Tempest. What about everyone else? We didn't even tell them we were leaving. They'll panic if you vanish without a word. Her voice wavered at the edges, caught between fear and frustration. Rimuru chuckled softly, not mocking, but warm and reassuring, like he had expected this from her. He stepped closer, closing the distance between them. Shizu froze as his hand rose, fingers brushing her cheek before resting there gently. The warmth of his palm quieted her protests more effectively than words ever could. Her blush spread instantly, her breath caught, and she found herself locked in his golden gaze. Shizu, Rimuru said softly, his thumb stroking along her cheekbone. His voice carried not just confidence but an unshakable certainty. You're forgetting something important. I'm me. Nothing is impossible for me anymore. Her lips parted, ready to argue, but the weight of his words held her silent. Her heart thudded unevenly in her chest, a rhythm betraying the turmoil she couldn't voice. Leaning closer, Rimuru's gaze didn't waver. When we return, it will be to the exact same moment we left. Time itself won't even notice. To them, not a single second will have passed. Tempest will be safe. Everyone will be fine. Which means, his smirk softened into something tender, we're free to enjoy this. No guilt, no worries, just us. Shizu's hand trembled against his sleeve. His words sank into her, dissolving the heavy knot of unease she carried, replacing it with something far more terrifying, and far more comforting. Trust. And then, as though the heavens themselves wished to seal his promise, the night sky shifted. Beyond the glass, silver streaks cut across the darkness. One, then another, then dozens, an endless cascade of light. A meteor shower painted the sky above Tokyo, falling stars scattering brilliance over the city below. Shizu gasped softly, her hand pressing tighter against the glass as if she could touch the stars themselves. Her eyes sparkled in wonder, her lips curving into a faint, breathless smile. It's beautiful, she whispered, her voice trembling in awe. Rimuru didn't look at the meteors. His gaze remained fixed on her, the reflection of starlight dancing in her eyes, the way her face softened like a child seeing magic for the very first time. His lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. Yeah, he murmured, almost to himself. Beautiful. Shizu blinked, turning to him. Her cheeks warmed under the glow of the stars and the city's light. In that moment, she realized this world was vast, overflowing with wonders she had long forgotten to dream about. And standing beside her, hand warm against her cheek, was someone who made even impossible promises sound certain. The city at night moved at a different pace, lights softer, noises folding into the background hum of traffic and distant conversations. Rimuru and Shizu walked side by side beneath a row of glowing street lamps, their shadows stretching long behind them across the pavement. Shizu glanced at him, her voice breaking the silence. Rimuru, where are we going to stay? Rimuru pointed ahead toward a modest hotel whose sign glowed warmly in the evening air. It wasn't big, but it looked clean and tidy, exactly the sort of place Rimuru would consider safe and convenient. There's a hotel up ahead, Rimuru told her with casual ease. Let's stay here tonight. Shizu nodded faintly. On the surface, her expression was calm, but her heart betrayed her. For reasons she couldn't name, her pulse quickened. Countless little scenarios she had never dared imagine suddenly bloomed behind her eyes, each one more impossible than the last. They pushed through the hotel doors into a cozy lobby. The faint smell of citrus cleaner and brewed coffee greeted them. A bell chimed softly as they entered, drawing the attention of the two staff members behind the desk. Hello, 2 rooms, thank you. Rimuru spoke politely as he approached, addressing the employees who had been quietly chatting. Shizu's eyes widened slightly at his words. She sighed inwardly, her heart sinking. Of course, 2 rooms. Sure enough, the flower I thought was blooming. It was just an illusion. Seal. This idiot. Doesn't he know she's been giving him so many chances today? The young female receptionist smiled warmly, tapping at her screen. Sir, 2 rooms, right? She asked again, confirming the request. Well, yes. 2. Please wait a moment. She began typing quickly, while the male receptionist beside her glanced between Rimuru and Shizu with a knowing look. After a moment, the man's face lit with sudden realization. He leaned forward, speaking with a sly smile. I'm sorry, you 2, but there's only one room left. Just one room? Rimuru frowned, brows furrowing slightly. How could it be such a coincidence? He turned to Shizu, uncertain. Shizu, how about we try another hotel? But before she could answer, the male receptionist spoke again, voice firm yet teasing. Brother, even if you change hotels, it'll be the same. Tonight there's a meteor shower. Every nearby place is already full. No need to waste your time. Besides, I'm advising you out of kindness. Rimuru paused, lips pressing into a thin line as he considered. Options were limited, and the man's words carried a certain practicality. Still, he wanted Shizu's say in the matter. Shizu, what do you think? Shizu lowered her eyes, her fingers lightly brushing together. Her voice was soft, almost fragile. I will do whatever you say. Rimuru nodded, then turned back toward the desk. Then please, get me a room. The male receptionist chuckled, raising his eyebrows as he typed away, clearly satisfied with himself. His partner at the desk, however, blinked in confusion at the exchange. After a few keystrokes, the man handed Rimuru a small plastic card with a flourish. Room 520. The elevator's just over there. Thanks. Rimuru paid quickly and led Shizu toward the elevator. Behind them, the male receptionist made a small triumphant gesture, clearly pleased with his little intervention. The female receptionist frowned, glancing back at her monitor. Brother, don't we have several vacant rooms? Why did you say only one? What do you know? Luckily I was here. Otherwise you would have ruined this chance. The woman's eyes narrowed as she gave him a disbelieving look but said no more. The elevator hummed as it rose. Inside the small cabin, the atmosphere shifted. Rimuru leaned against the wall, calm and composed. Shizu, on the other hand, pinched lightly at the corner of her sleeve, her beautiful eyes darting toward the scrolling advertisements on the wall. She stared at them too intently, trying to hide the nervous flutter in her chest. By the time the elevator chimed on the 5th floor, both wore carefully different expressions. The hallway was quiet, carpet soft beneath their feet. Rimuru led the way to room 520, swiping the card at the lock with ease. When the door clicked open, he turned and handed the card to Shizu. Shizu, I'll leave first. Remember to rest early. Shizu blinked, taking the card in both hands. Her heart clenched unexpectedly, thousands of imagined futures collapsing at once. His words, so casually spoken, left her strangely confused. Rimuru, where are you going? Scratching his head, Rimuru gave an awkward laugh. Well, there's only one room here. You stay. I'll see if there's anywhere else for me to sleep. His offhand manner made her chest tighten. She had expected, hoped, even, that he might insist on staying together. Instead, he tried to sidestep the situation. Seal. I truly cannot help his lack of sense when it comes to romance. Rimuru tilted his head. Did you say something, Seal? Seal. It's just your imagination. Before he could step away, Shizu spoke again, her voice trembling slightly. Rimuru, if you leave, what if something happens to me? Her words struck deeper than any argument. Rimuru froze, her fragile tone sinking into him like a weight. He hesitated for only a breath before nodding softly. Okay then. Shizu's lips curved into a small, radiant smile, one that seemed to light up the quiet corridor. She pushed the door open, then looked back at him. Come in, Rimuru. What's wrong with you today? Rimuru's hand tightened slightly before he stepped inside. For some reason, this simple act felt strangely difficult, like crossing a boundary he hadn't realized was there. The truth was, he was nervous. It had been so long since he'd shared a room, let alone with someone like Shizu. Not since he was a child, back when he still slept beside his mother. This closeness, this intimacy, felt new and unsettling, and yet, oddly comforting. He stepped further inside, and a soft fragrance drifted toward him, delicate, floral, almost nostalgic. Rimuru inhaled slowly, trying to steady himself, but the faint sweetness clung to him, making his chest feel lighter and tighter at the same time. As I walked into the room, a fragrance hit my nose, sweet, soft. Was it the roses? Or Shizu? Shizu reached for the switch and flicked on the light. Warm illumination spread across the room, slowly revealing its details, and both of them froze. Most of the walls were painted in tender shades of pink, accented by small, colorful paintings that gave the place a dreamy, almost whimsical air. In the corner, a glass vase held blooming roses, their perfume mingling with the already sweet atmosphere. But none of that compared to the centerpiece. The bed dominated the room. A large, unmistakable, heart-shaped bed swathed in silky satin sheets, pale pink with a tiny red heart embroidered right at the center. The lamps were not plain white either. Their mellow amber light washed the space in golden hues, softening every line and corner, adding a hazy, intimate warmth. The entire room seemed designed with one purpose: romance. Rimuru's throat tightened. He coughed once, the sound thin in the charged air. This is, wow. He tried to laugh it off, but his voice caught, betraying his unease. His hand twitched at his side, as though unsure whether to scratch his head or bury his face. The fragrance of roses mixed with something gentler, something uniquely Shizu's. He swallowed, unsure whether the heat rising in him was from the room's atmosphere or his own nervousness. Shizu herself stood silently, eyes wide, lips parting just slightly as her gaze wandered over the overwhelmingly pink room. Her cheeks flushed faintly, almost the same shade as the walls. She was dazed, caught between shock and an emotion she didn't quite want to name. There was a moment where neither moved, two statues standing in the middle of an over-decorated couple's suite, the silence heavy with an awkward kind of expectation. Rimuru broke it first, his voice soft but wry. "I thought this was an ordinary suite. Didn't expect it to be a couple's room." Shizu's hands tightened against the fabric of her skirt, her heartbeat quickening in her chest. Her lips curved into the faintest of smiles, though her eyes still shimmered with nervousness. It was past 12 o'clock. Rimuru sat by the window, quietly listening to the sound of water outside. The night air was cool, but his thoughts were far from calm. His golden eyes looked distant, his mind drifting endlessly. Inside the bathroom, Shizu was taking a bath. The frosted glass blurred her figure, yet that hazy outline carried a kind of beauty that made one's imagination run wild. Although he liked Shizu deeply, doubt crept into his heart. Is this relationship developing too fast? Wait, what if I can't help myself? What if I lose control? If I do something worse than an animal, wouldn't that hurt Shizu? Rimuru exhaled slowly, shaking his head to chase away the dangerous thoughts swirling in his mind. Suddenly, Shizu's trembling voice broke the silence. "Rimuru, do you like me?" she asked softly, her tone low, almost fragile. Her voice quivered with nervousness, her cheeks burning red. That faint blush only made her look even more beautiful, even more irresistible. Rimuru was startled by the sudden question. His heart skipped, and before he could even think, the words tumbled out subconsciously. "Of course I like you. I like you very much." Hearing his answer, Shizu's breath caught. She raised her head in surprise, her eyes shining with unhidden joy. Her gaze locked onto Rimuru's, those crystal-clear purple eyes, as if they contained pure spring water. Rimuru almost lost himself in their depth. He already knew in his heart that Shizu liked him too, but hearing it aloud, seeing her reaction, it made him feel unexplainably happy. Shizu pursed her lips, her expression softening as she leaned forward slightly, closing the distance between them. Her voice trembled as she whispered, then, "What do you like about me?" "Everything about you is good," Rimuru answered seriously, his golden eyes steady. "I like your gentleness, your kindness, your bravery. Everything about you." Shizu's lips curved into a radiant smile, her entire face lighting up. "Do you really think so?" Rimuru nodded firmly, his voice filled with certainty. "You're really the best girl in the world." Shizu's heart fluttered, her blush deepening. "So, when did you start liking me?" Rimuru thought for only a moment before replying honestly. "Probably the moment I first met you." Her lips trembled, and her voice softened with emotion. "I too, when you gave me back my memories and saved my life. My heart was touched when I saw everything you did for me in my memories." Her smile grew even brighter, tears faintly glimmering in her eyes as she looked up at Rimuru. "Meeting you is the luckiest thing in my life." Rimuru's lips curved gently as well. "Then, we will be together, happy forever in the future." Her chest tightened as she repeated his words in a soft murmur, almost like a prayer. "We will be together, happy forever." But even as she said it, her throat closed up, and her vision blurred with tears. She felt like crying because the happiness she held in that moment was so overwhelming, so fragile, she wanted to cling to it forever. He kissed me again, gently, reverently, his golden eyes looking into mine like I was everything to him. "I love you, Shizu," he whispered, resting his forehead against mine. Tears slipped down my cheeks as I clung to him, my heart so full it felt like it might burst. I love you too, Rimuru, more than anyone else in this world. The rain kept falling, gentle, steady. But in this moment, I had never felt more complete. After that night they continued their travels the next morning, the quiet comfort between them lingering like the warmth of a dream. Every glance, every small touch carried the memory of the night they shared, unspoken, yet understood. Kyoto and Nara Fushimi Inari Shrine, they walked through thousands of glowing red torii gates at sunset. The light painted Shizu's face in hues of orange and gold. Rimuru walked beside her in silence, hands tucked into his pockets, but his heart was far from calm. He stopped for a brief moment, closing his eyes and offering a quiet prayer, for her happiness, for their time together never to fade. Arashiyama Bamboo Grove, the soft rustle of bamboo leaves surrounded them, a whispering sea of green. Shizu tilted her head back, admiring the endless canopy above. Rimuru leaned closer, voice low and teasing. You know, Shizu, even with all this beauty around us, you're still the most breathtaking thing here. Her eyes widened, and a faint blush colored her cheeks. You shouldn't say things like that so easily. He grinned. Why not? It's true. Kinkaku-ji, Golden Pavilion, they stood by the lake, the temple shimmering like a dream reflected on the water. Shizu's expression softened in awe. It's beautiful, she murmured. Rimuru crossed his arms, pretending to evaluate it seriously. It is, though if my subordinate had built it, it'd probably be slime blue instead of gold. Shizu stifled a laugh. That actually sounds like something they would do. Nara Deer Park. The afternoon sun cast a warm glow as they fed the gentle deer wandering freely. One stubborn deer, however, seemed to have taken a liking to Rimuru, following him relentlessly. Rimuru backed away with exaggerated alarm. Shizu! It's after me. Help! It's vengeance for the others I didn't feed. She laughed so hard she could barely breathe. It just wants your food, not your soul. Rimuru held the bag of treats over his head dramatically. That's what it wants you to think. Shizu's laughter echoed through the park, bright and free. Hiroshima and Miyajima Peace Memorial Park. The air here felt heavier, filled with memories and quiet sorrow. Shizu stood before the memorial, her expression distant, eyes reflecting old pain. Rimuru didn't speak. He simply took her hand, fingers tightening gently around hers, a silent reminder that she wasn't alone. Miyajima Island and Itsukushima Shrine, they arrived just as the tide began to rise, the floating torii gate glowing orange beneath the setting sun. Shizu stood beside him, her hair swaying in the sea breeze. Rimuru glanced at her, voice soft. This view, it's nice, but not as nice as the one next to me. Shizu's cheeks flared pink as she looked away. You really need to stop saying things like that. He chuckled, leaning in slightly. Can't help it if it's true. She sighed, but the smile on her lips betrayed her. Osaka Dotonbori street food. The street was alive with color and scent. They sampled everything, takoyaki, okonomiyaki, kushikatsu. And for every bite, Rimuru managed to burn his tongue. Ow! Hot! Too hot! He yelped for the third time. Shizu watched him calmly, already cooling her next bite with practiced ease. You could just wait a few seconds. But it smells too good, he complained, fanning his mouth. She shook her head with a soft laugh. Honestly, Osaka Castle, the towering white walls and broad moats stretched before them. Rimuru studied it with exaggerated seriousness. You know, if Veldora ever came here, this whole thing would last maybe 5 minutes before he accidentally blew it up. Shizu chuckled. He'd probably say he was just testing its durability. Rimuru threw his hands up dramatically. Exactly. Oh no, my sneeze destroyed another national treasure. Her laughter rang clear, bright as the afternoon sun. Summer festival 3 months had passed since Rimuru and Shizu began their journey across Japan. They'd wandered through bustling cities and quiet countryside, tried every local dish they could find, and even fed deer in Nara. Day by day, Rimuru found himself growing more enchanted, not with the sights, but with the woman walking beside him. When summer finally came, so did the fireworks festival. Yukata moment Rimuru waited near the festival gates, hands in his pockets, the sound of drums echoing in the warm evening air. He turned at the faint click of Geta sandals, and froze. Shizu stood there, wearing a pale lavender yukata patterned with white lilies. Her dark hair was tied loosely, a few strands framing her blushing face. For a long moment, Rimuru forgot how to breathe. Shizu fidgeted with her sleeve, glancing up nervously. "Does it look strange?" she asked softly. Rimuru's brain short-circuited. "You look too beautiful, actually." Her cheeks flared pink, and she quickly looked away. Don't say things like that so easily." Festival fun. They wandered through rows of glowing lanterns, laughter and music filling the air. Rimuru insisted on trying every game stall they passed: goldfish scooping, ring toss, and a shooting gallery that seemed suspiciously rigged. Not that it mattered. Rimuru might have used his absurd reflexes to hit every target with perfect precision. "Rimuru, that's cheating," Shizu whispered, trying not to laugh. "Hey, I call it skill enhancement," he replied with a grin, handing her the prizes, a delicate fox mask and a stuffed doll shaped like a little slime. Shizu hugged the doll close, smiling shyly. "Thank you, I'll treasure it." Fireworks show later. They found a quiet spot by the riverbank. The night sky exploded in color, reflections dancing on the water. Rimuru leaned back on his hands, pretending to admire the fireworks, but his gaze kept drifting toward Shizu. The soft light painted her face in shades of crimson and gold, her eyes shining like stars. She must have felt his gaze, because she turned slightly, meeting his eyes. "You're staring again," she murmured. "Can you blame me?" Rimuru said, his voice low and sincere. Her blush deepened, but she didn't look away. Proposal. As the final fireworks bloomed across the sky, Rimuru took a slow breath and reached for her hand. "Shizu." His voice was quiet, but every word carried his heart. "Spending these days with you has been the happiest time of my life. I don't want this to end." He squeezed her hand gently, golden eyes reflecting the fading light. "Will you marry me?" Shizu gasped softly, her eyes shimmering with tears. For a heartbeat, the world was silent. Then the last firework burst above them, painting the sky in brilliant gold. "Yes," she whispered, her lips trembling in a smile. "I'd love to." Rimuru smiled, warmth blooming in his chest as he pulled her into a gentle embrace, the night sky glittering above them.